Hello everyone and welcome to the latest episode of SUGTalks. I'm Craig Dale, your host, and together with our special guest we'll take a deep dive into the topics, challenges and opportunities facing SAP users today. Please make sure you do subscribe so you don't miss any of our future episodes. I'm delighted to be joined again today by Conor Riordan, Chair and Board Member of UK ISUG, and Ian Mallinson, Board Member of UK ISUG. So welcome, gentlemen.
Hi. Hey, great to be here.
It's great to have you because today we're going to be discussing the experience of and the main announcements made at this year's Sapphire conferences in Orlando and Madrid. And just before we get into that, as you know, main conversations around the events in Orlando and Madrid, and I know you both obviously recently travelled to at least one of them, I'd like to ask you, what's your best travel hack? And if I may start with you, Ian.
Oh my word. Oh. Well, it's not a hack, but I don't know. I don't know if it's something about my personality, but I travelled to Madrid on Ryanair, and I have to be at the front of the queue. I have to be at the front of the queue so I can get my cabin bag up above in the shelves. Because otherwise, who knows what's going to happen. So that's mine. Very trivial, but that's mine.
Get your bag in before chaos starts.
Exactly so.
Conor?
Yeah, I think for me, I travel a lot. I travel long haul a lot as well. And I suppose my main hack at this stage is to eat before I get on the plane. And then when I get on the plane, go to sleep as quick as I can. So over the years, I think airline food has gotten worse and worse. So, even in business class, it's probably not worth signing up for anymore. So, yeah, get to sleep as quick as I can and eat before I get on the plane.
Oh, cool. Thank you for that. I think mine is always to look at the weather of the destination and pack appropriately. And I think that comes from many years ago when I went on holiday. We were going on holiday with the kids to Scotland and we packed for Barbados. And we got Scotland. So we had to go shopping once we were there for Scottish kind of weather. But anyway, moving swiftly on. If I may start with you, Ian. As you mentioned, you went to Madrid, Sapphire. So what were your overall impressions of Sapphire 2026?
Well, it's a big gathering, isn't it? It's a big gathering. There's always going to be some big announcement. So I'm pleased I was there. It was good to hear. But, it's always the case, and I think it's the same with our conference. The things that I enjoyed the most about going to Sapphire were actually the customer success stories. The smaller breakouts where you hear about what companies are actually doing with SAP and the learnings of those things. So, of course, the keynotes are important to hear and so on, but and then it's getting to the truth of what's behind those, which I'm sure we'll come on to. But for me, the highlight is always hearing what other customers are doing and learning from that.
Oh, thanks, Ian. And Conor, what was it for you?
I think for me, the highlight was probably just shifting conversation away maybe from technology to enterprise insights. And I suppose as we look at AI, there's a lot of conversation around AI, but really in terms of how SAP is positioning themselves as the autonomous AI and how that is basically going to help organizations, I suppose, drive innovation over the next 5 to 10 years. So it was really interesting from that perspective.
So staying with you on that perspective, Conor, obviously the headline message of this year's was SAP positioning itself perhaps as a business AI company rather than simply a software company with the autonomous enterprise as a destination. What did you make of that framing?
I think it was a good story because I think, people have been talking about for many years about the importance of data from an AI perspective, and data is critically important. But the process graph or the knowledge graph is just as important. Like how do your processes hang together? How do your systems hang together? What's that semantic layer? And so having a solution whereby your data models, your semantic layer, your process graph, and then your agent sitting on top are all working in unison, I think it's kind of giving, in theory, it's giving SAP a unique selling point, I think, that maybe the competition don't have at the moment. And for me, the tone I took from SAP was that they were quite bullish. I think they're quite confident that the offering they now have with the business data cloud, with the integration with Databricks and Snowflake and all these things they've done over the last 12 months, that they're actually offering a solution now that organizations can actually use and will give them credible business output.
Thanks. You mentioned data there, and Christian Klein said 80% accuracy is just not good enough for mission critical processes like payroll or financial close. Ian, did the keynotes give you confidence that SAP can actually clear that bar, or does it still feel aspirational?
Well, first of all, to what Conor said, I think SAP's claimed that the fact that this is based on business data, if you like, ERP being the business brain, I would more describe it as a nervous system, but I get what they're saying, and I do think that is different to what AI is often built on. I do think everybody knows that data is important, and I think if the data in ERP is being used to run a business, it's probably got a higher level of data quality within and the business context, which means AI can really work in the SAP landscape. So I get that. In terms of the accuracy point about, I think the example was AI is not very good at word counts. Large language models are not very good at word counts, and I get that. I don't think we know yet. We can't be sure whether that accuracy level will be achieved within the SAP landscape, but I get that the building blocks are there and that is more likely. And then what they also said, and we'll have to see, is, and this is, as there are more and more agents, we almost need to have a HR department for agents. Because they'll need to be monitored and controlled, and their performance will need to be reviewed in the same way that humans are. And what SAP said was that LeanIX will be the way that agents will be monitored and they're monitored, governed, their effectiveness can be assessed, and their productivity, if you like. How often they're used, how effective they are. So I think SAP, that it was a good story. We need to see, but I think they're on the right track.
Thank you. Anything to add there, Conor?
Yeah, and I think, just beyond Sapphire, the previous week we were in Waldorf and we were at Sugan, and Thomas Swarzig was talking to us. And he's talking about that specific point that Ian made there about, commoditizing the agents to be able to understand the value each agent is bringing, because there's a need to, if you're running an agent, how much does it cost to run it? And what's the return on investment? The same way as you'd have with any employee. And in large enterprises, what's the recharge model to recharge maybe back down into enterprises? So people see that there's a cost, like agents are not free. There's a cost to manage them, there's a cost to maintain them, there's a cost to run them. And, part of the discussion is like, does it make sense to put these processes on this platform and use this technology? Or is it cheaper to use humans? That's still a big question. So I think that's part of the conversation, the business case around when to use them and why to use them. And it's not just a case of let's just use them if it makes no economic sense. You wouldn't do it with any other technology. So this one is the same.
Thank you. And while we're on that subject of agents, the autonomous suite, if you like, with 50 plus dual assistants and 200 plus agents, was the big launch, if you like. And Ian, what's your honest read on how ready this is for member organisations to actually deploy?
Yeah, no, good question. Whenever I go to a conference like this, the first question is it real? How easy is it to implement, and how much does it cost? And Conor just touched on the cost side of that. We don't really know yet, but we can probably start to monitor that in a way that we talked about. But in terms of how real the agents are, I believe there's 200 and odd of those alive and available. I've not checked. But what I would say is I think some of it is still aspirational, because there was a whole section of Sapphire about the autonomous enterprise, and it was talking about autonomous supply chain and so on. And my specific interest is around supply chain systems. And when I was talking to people on the desk there at that section, there were, I think, 47 agents identified on a screen that would be able to support in the supply chain side of things. But when I asked the question how many were available now, there were 2 available. 2 out of 47 or something like that, with the rest to follow maybe next quarter or by the end of the year. So I do think SAP are onto something. I have confidence it'll come, but my sense is it's not there now. It's directional, and there's a lot of work to do to get those things alive.
Yeah, I think you're right, and to back to Conor's comment, the week before we were in Waldorf, and one of the sessions we had was with Sebastian Steinhauser, and he clearly said to us that this is the autonomous enterprise is SAP's vision. It is not yet reality, and we're heading towards that vision. And there was a lot of confidence that Christian Klein will deliver on that vision. And Conor, just coming back to you, because one of the key elements, headline examples used, was the autonomous close assistant. With the claims of compression financial close from weeks to days. Did you see anything perhaps on the show floor that backed those kind of numbers up, or is that proof still to come?
I think, I kind of come this maybe from a different perspective. I mean, I spent many years doing process mining, which is analysing the way we execute processes. And, within any of my processes, say within order to cash, if I can get what we call the happy path, the standard way of working. If I can get 85% of my process to be on the happy path, I'm doing really, really well. But that means 15% of them are not on the happy path. And then the question is, when you put agentic AI on top of a process that's run standard 85% of the time, how do you manage the other 15%? And I think that's where for me this kicks in as to what business outcome are we trying to achieve here? Are we trying to automate and eliminate humans, or are we trying to support humans just doing work faster? And I think if it's the latter, I think if we're using these agents to help people do their job faster, I think knowing that there's limitations, then I think organizations will be successful. If you're trying to use these agents like RPA, you're going to find, I think organizations find this really difficult to say, here's the process, I'm going to put it in an agent and eliminate people. I just don't think that's possible, because with the best will in the world, even organizations that are highly standardized, if their happy path is 80 to 85%, that's as good as they're going to get. There's going to be so many variations to the process that, I don't think there'll ever be an agent that'll be good enough to be able to figure out all the permutations and combinations in a way that a human can process all that complexity. So I think these agents are good, but I think they're good as tools to help people accelerate their work, maybe then eliminate people from the process.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, Conor. And in a way, maybe autonomous is the wrong word. I get that it's a good word from a marketing point of view, but the idea that AI is augmenting humans, but humans are still there, and SAP do say that. They're not saying that humans are not going to be around, but augmentation, help, aid, and dealing with the happy path of the processes in order that humans can focus on the complex and non-standard makes sense.
Yeah, I think what you both referred to there, keeping the human in the loop and keeping that control, which was mentioned. I think Sebastian Steinhauser mentioned it as a dog on a leash framing. Kind of starting tight extending autonomy perhaps as trust builds. But from your perspective, Conor, I mean, how are SAP customers thinking about the journey from supervised to autonomous?
I think at the moment customers are still, I don't think we're even at that stage. I think we're still trying to figure out, I think it's kind of, and we're trying to do this at the moment, even my own organization, trying to grapple is like, do you put an agent on a process, or do you redesign your process so the agent works differently? Like, so I think we're even at that more fundamental part of how do you want the process to work in an agentic world? And that might not be automating or trying to automate your existing process. It might be re-looking at actually how you do your process. So I think there's a lot of components to this at the moment in terms of trying to figure out what does process execution look like in an agentic world. And some of it, like I think what we saw in Sapphire is users mightn't even be on SAP running transactions. They're in Copilot, asking Copilot to create a purchase order, and it's just gone off and doing it, or removing a delivery block or doing a price change. And how we interact with SAP, the user interface, could be totally different, and therefore if it is going to be totally different, how we engineering the process could be totally different. So I think there's I think we're still scrambling around in the dark here trying to figure this out. And I think this is why the user group is going to be great. Like, I think it's customers bringing their stories to say, look, we tried it this way and it didn't work, and then we tried it this way, it didn't work. And you know what? We tried this other way, and wow, we got some great results. So I think it's going to be 18 months or 2 years of customer stories and learning from each other in terms of how this actually works. I don't think there's a manual out there. This stuff is too innovative and too novel, I think.
Totally agree, Conor. And absolutely, that's where the user group and members of the user group sharing those stories is really going to help. But to your point, Craig, there about period end close and so on, I think we'll absolutely get to the stage where agents can do that. And then if Conor says, but do you change the business process in order that they can do that? Can they do that with the process the way it is? But the other point is then it's getting the humans to allow that thing to happen. So there's all kinds of change. Do the finance teams, do they whether the agent's trustworthy or not, do they trust the agent to do it? Can they come away from their old ways of working, humans, in order to enable that? This is going to be, as you say, Conor, 18 months, 2 years of learning to find out how this is actually going to work. What is the relationship between agents and humans in this process world?
Yeah, the interesting point there, Conor, you also mentioned the interface, if you like, the user interface, and dual work was talked as a new conversational interface with SAP, where, if you like, we're describing a business outcome in natural language and let dual orchestrate the workflow on that. That seemed to get a lot of stage time. But do you think that can really change the day-to-day SAP experience for end users? Or perhaps have we heard similar promises before, Ian?
Yeah, I think what it'll do, Craig, I think it'll change the conversation. So I think when I'm looking at this, it's like I run an order to cash business. It would be great to go into dual work and ask it, like, how do I reduce my delivery cost by 15% for this customer group? And it's got all my SAP data in there, and it crunches it and comes back and says, you can change your delivery strategy, you can change your delivery frequency. Maybe if you move these things from morning to evening shipments or whatever. I think this is the power of it. It's not such about how do you execute a transaction, but it's how do you make intelligent decisions, not based on a graph or a table, but based on, I have this business problem that historically, if I asked a question to my department, it might take 3 weeks and they still wouldn't get the right answer. Now all of a sudden, you got these agents that are intelligent enough to actually figure this stuff out. I think that's going to be the game changer, rather than just executing the transaction faster or removing the human from the execution. I think it's going to be getting those insights. And I think that's why I would say we're changing maybe from a system of record to a system of insight. We have all this data, millions and millions of data records in there. It's like, how do you mine it and get the insights to change your business? That's, I think, where the value is going to be for organizations.
Yeah, and Craig, to that question, in the user interface, the fact that you can use natural language to define a set of functionality that you're interested in. I mean, there were demos, but it looked pretty neat. The fact that you put a high-level set of requirements in, it builds a requirement specification, which you can then amend as a human, and then it'll go off and build the code for the agent. That's neat. I'm very keen that we get some of our people starting to experiment with that and see, is it really like that when you come to try and build your own? But it did look really neat. And if it is like that, then I think it will be very impressive.
Yeah, and I think, Ian, one of the things I think from again a change management perspective is historically, IT has come to the business to define requirements, and we document requirements, we give it back to IT. I think when I look at Joule Studio, I think some of the power of this is how can we democratize this technology so that actually super users or intelligent business analysts that are very close to the process can actually start writing the stuff themselves in a development quality environment to build stuff and then give it over to IT to kind of productionize it. Because I think in order to be able to maximize the innovation, I think having the people that are closest to the process to experiment is where we're going to see the value. And that could be a friction point between traditional IT and business, where as IT people, we don't want to let the control over to the business. And as business people, they don't want to be told by IT that, you have to go this way and fill out these forms. So I think that'll be an interesting challenge as well in terms of the democratization of Joule Studio and who manages and controls it.
So on that Joule Studio point, or Joule Studio 2.0, if you like, there was the announcement around the €100 million partner development fund, and also Joule Studio 2.0 being free through to the end of the year. What did you make of the ecosystem play in that regard, Ian?
The 100 million thing, I missed that. I must have been too busy making notes about other things. But it's really important. You kind of said that nobody knows really quite how to do this yet, and it's going to take 18 months, 2 years to work it out. And there'll be a certain amount of self-learning, there'll be a certain amount of prodding and poking from SAP, but the partners are going to play a key role to actually get this thing ignited and alive and starting to come to life. So if that's what SAP put in place, great. I'd be interested. I don't know what the mechanics of that are, and that would be important, but I think it's essential. And we'll need to talk to the partners and see how they intend to make use of that.
Yeah. And I think the other thing, like 100 million is obviously a lot of money, but in the overall scheme of things, spread across the partners, like, it's not a huge amount of money either. So it'll just be interesting. I think the sentiment is good. It's just going to be interesting to see how they carve up that money and what the output is. But the sentiment is definitely a good sentiment.
And hopefully we will see quite a bit coming from the partners on that.
We know our community, but we don't know yours yet. Why not share the benefits of your UKI Sub membership with those who don't know about us? The UKI Sub referral scheme rewards you for helping to grow and develop our community. You can check out the link in the description to find out more about how you can get involved. Terms and conditions apply. We hope you enjoy the rest of the podcast.
And one of the areas about this, and it's always been kind of there loitering in the background, I suppose, with agentic AI, and especially when we're talking about autonomous, and that is liability. SAP quite clear that the customer holds a call on what the agents do. What do you think that means with regards to governance for customers embarking on the journey to autonomous enterprise?
Well, I'll take that, Craig. I think SAP are on to something. I think that the fact that agents are governed within limitations of what the human role that it's playing a part of are, I think, definitely helps. I think the fact that the data structure and the way it is helps. I think the fact that the agents can be monitored and that every transaction is traceable will help. So I get all of that. But there is still the unknown of just where this could go, isn't there? You know, so some people describe doomsday scenarios about AI and going off and doing crazy things that it shouldn't do. So there'll be nervousness, but I think relative to other AI models and architectures and setups, I do think SAP have a point, and I think it's a fair one. It's still a risk, isn't it? It's something we're going to have to watch very carefully.
Yeah, and I think even, Craig, you know, within most of our own organisations, like we've got defined segregation of duties, we've got SOX controls. Like we have a lot of business controls today. I think, to me, what's key is like just because you put in, you know, AI doesn't mean you throw the controls out the window. So I think still as an organisations, we still have to look at these controls and mean like you got to have your process controls in place, your segregation of duties. You know, should you have an agent that can create a purchase order, do the receipt and pay the invoice? Probably not. It probably wouldn't be the cleverest thing to do. So I think there is a responsibility, obviously, in organisations, and I think ultimately, it'd be interesting to see what our auditors ultimately say as well. Like, you know, like in terms of, I think I was at Thomas, you know, when we had the JP Morgan on stage in Orlando. You know, it's one of the key selling points that we have, that these agents are SOX compliant and that they're auditable and that the information is available, which I think again is key for organisations. You know, if you're generating your P&L and your balance sheets and they're going to be subject to these controls, you have to have the backup. So, I don't think the liability can't shift to anyone, but it has to stay where it is. Like we have to manage and control these agents and have the process controls in place.
Sovereignty, that was another element that I think was quite a bit of a bigger theme this year. There was talk around Maestro Plus generally available on Sovereign Cloud, Kahia North coming in June, and also Martin Mertz's 4 dimensions of sovereignty. How significant do you feel that is for our UK and Ireland members, Conor?
I think, I mean, we certainly have, like, when we look at our segment, our user base, we there's a group within there, like we've got like the governments, we've got like the defence organisations where sovereignty is really, really important, and you know, the data and where the data is residing, how these systems are managed and supported. So I think it is really important. I think that the fact that SAP is now offering a sovereign cloud solution in all the major markets is a testament to the fact that there's demand out there. So I think there's a demand out there that SAP are meeting, but there's also, we can see it from organizations, there's a big uptake on it. So I think in today's world, very geopolitical tensions out there, I think it's getting more and more important that we have control over our data and our processes within our own jurisdictions. And I think for some organizations that's critical. And I think it's going to become more and more important.
Yeah, absolutely, and it affects different organisations differently. But there'll be many of our members that it will really matter a lot, and that comes up in workshops when we meet with those types of members. And I think SAP are getting on with the job now, but I think it's probably taken a little while to get moving. Actually, from my understanding, in the UK, the sovereign cloud provision is best, with a lot of the products having some availability through AWS, kind of European sovereign cloud. But it's not the same across Europe and wider countries in Europe. There's still a long way to go yet. So I think probably if you're happy to go with AWS European sovereign cloud, then UK is not in too bad a place versus other markets, actually.
Okay, thank you. And just moving slightly on now. I mean, still around the elements around dual assistance, AI, etc. the messaging around Rise and Grow seem to shift again, with 3 dual assistants activated in year 1 for Rise customers, full portfolio access onboarding for Grow customers, and AI scenarios now available for on-prem customers who commit to moving the majority of their landscape to cloud ERP. Do you feel that landed well with customers still weighing up the move, Conor?
Yeah, well, certainly in Orlando, the biggest clap in the audience was when the announcement that Joule was going to be available for ECC and S4 on-prem customers. Obviously, there's caveats. First of all, you have to be on that.
Same in Madrid.
Yeah. And obviously, the first thing is you have to be on that Grow journey. And then the second part of it was, they're not going to re-engineer the data model. So if the data models in S4 public match the data models for ECC and S4 on-prem, then they can make them available. But they're not building solutions for ECC. They're making available what will work, which is, it's still good. It's still progress.
Yeah, it'll be a small selection, and that's understandable. But it's progress, I think.
Yeah,
it's progress. But I wasn't sure on that, so I got the essence of it, and that's important for me with my previous employer. But is that right? You have to be you have to be signed up for Rise to get it on ECC, or not necessarily. I wasn't convinced that was needed. Was it? Do we know?
I think it's committing. The one for on the Rise journey is kind of committing to 50%, I believe, of your maintenance expenditure into cloud.
To be in cloud products, right? Yeah, I did hear something about that. Okay.
Yep, that's my understanding. And if there's any changes to that, we'll update this later in the notes.
But that will certainly make that more available to more of our members, won't it? Which can only be a good thing. Yeah,
I think that's one of the key things. What I was missing, I think, at last year's Sapphire was the bridge from cloud to on-prem customers, on helping customers on that journey. And I think, that last point, really did talk to the install base that are on either ECC or on-prem S4. I think that bridge was there this year. I don't know whether you agree or disagree, guys.
Yeah, I think so. I think it was also clever by SAP because, you're giving your ECC customers a taste of Joule, and therefore once they get a taste they'll want more, and how do you get more when you move to S4? So I think as a teaser it's probably a clever strategy as well.
Thank you. And just moving off the main messages for now, if I may, beyond the keynotes, what did you find most valuable about being at Sapphire? I think you alluded to a couple of areas earlier, Ian. So if I may come to you on that, what did you find valuable?
Well, there's just something else. Sorry, I'm going to take you back to AI in a minute, but then I can talk about the other things. There's just something else that I think was really good to hear is AI agents being available to support on migration projects. So for those that are still on ECC and need to make the move to S4, system analysis agents, so to help organizations understand more what their as-is landscape is and what the pain points are going to be to move. Data management assistants, custom code assistants, and I think again they're not all necessarily available already yet, but the idea that they're coming, I think, could be really helpful. And for those organizations that are still on ECC and thinking about how or when they do it, what, hanging on another 6 months until the conversion agents are available may not be a bad thing, and something that we should probably all just keep in mind and watch this space for.
Yeah, it was a good point, because I think we pressed in Waldorf. I mean, they were saying maybe up to 30 to 40% saving using the agents in terms of the work. I think the other one that didn't come up, and this reduction. The other one I believe they have, but they didn't talk about it, is they have an agent as well to help identify whether you should go on public cloud or private cloud. And I know, talking to a lot of customers, this is something that customers are spending a lot of money on, trying to make the decision. So the fact that there's an agent out there that can help take in all your data, look at your fit to standard, look at where you're at, look at your core process, and actually come back with a recommendation and say, you know what, you're an 85% fit for public cloud. Like, that could be another tool to help people with their decision making.
Yes.
Without having to spend hundreds of thousands of euros or pounds trying to get somebody in to do the work. So that's another one I'd encourage people to look at, the public-private cloud agent.
Yeah, really good point, Conor, because I do think that, and I know it makes sense, the more public cloud develops as a product, the gap from ECC to public is probably going to become less. So an agent that can make those comparisons and guide you is a great thing if that's coming along. Great. In terms of other things, Craig, I mean, about other things, and so I always appreciate hearing from other customer success stories. There was a field service management implementation energy company. There was an EWM implementation in a global coatings company, and that's what I like, hearing that. Yeah, and warts and all, the good things, the bad things involved in those kind of implementations are always great value for me.
Yeah, I'd say the same here, Ian. I think the customer conversations were really, really good. I was really interested in the CX space, and I got to meet the senior leaders from SAP in the CX as well, and just able to listen to them and talk to them about, not about the here and now, but what's their vision over the next 2 years, where are they going, and what, just to see what they're thinking. Just really interesting to see, what the roadmap looks like. And especially people that are talking to you that don't have a sales influence, they're talking from product technical development, they're passionate about building stuff, so they're open to telling you about what the products might look like in the next 12 to 18 months. So that's, again, just, it helps kind of frame direction of travel without being maybe tied into legal stuff about what we can and can't say. Much more open when you're on the floor and asking questions. They'll tell you what's in the pipeline,
Thank you. I mean, for me, I always feel it's that human element, the people and engaging with, and reforming those relationships, building on them and growing them. For instance, we were out in Orlando and I met with the Canadian guys and the Australian guys, and we were talking about the potential of a Commonwealth public sector community. That wouldn't have happened anywhere else, because we wouldn't have been in the same location at the same time. And engaging with the ASUG guys at the ASUG annual conference was fantastic. So I think that human element and that people connection is key for these kind of events. But kind of like moving on, I suppose, and coming towards a close now, from a UK ISUG perspective, when we're looking at what our members potentially should be focusing on in maybe the months and even years ahead, as this vision becomes a reality, what do you feel our members should be focusing on in the months and years ahead? And if I can start with you, Ian, on that one.
I think everybody needs to make a start. Experiment, give it a go. On something small, cut your teeth, and see how things develop. And because this is in a way the problem that we have across the membership is there's very few people actually really doing it yet, and so we've all got to lean in and just make that first step. And the more first steps that are taken in more member organisations, the more we can then learn from each other. And if, as you say, it's true that Dual Studio 2.0 is free till the end of the year, there's an opportunity to step in and do some of that now. The problem, Craig, is everybody, there's pressure on IT directors, CIOs to do more and more of this stuff. So the demand is there for it, but CIOs have lots of other things on their plates to deliver and move on with. And so then initially, some of these AI agents are probably not game changing. They are experimental and they may become game changing. It's carving out enough time and resource to do those initial experiments and make those first steps. But I just encourage us all as a membership community to make some of those first steps so we can all then learn from each other, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so that's where I suppose, I think it was touched on earlier from you both, in how we can help our members engage more of the business side as well to aid that and to help that moving forward. And on that note, Conor, anything from you on what our members should be looking at?
Yeah, I think what I would say, and it maybe goes back to Sugan again when we met with Christian Klein, and we spoke with Christian about, what SAP have been doing over the last 12 months. And he talked about they've been retraining their software developers to be process architects and data scientists. And it was really interesting around that point, because when we think of the autonomous enterprise and we think of the three layers, we've got the data model, we got the process graph, and then we got the agent sitting on top. Most organizations do not understand how their processes work. They just do not understand. And I think a unique opportunity here for the IT organization is to spend less time building stuff and maybe more time simplifying the landscape, understanding the process, how it works end to end, and really understanding the data models. Because I think the value going forward is going to be on enterprise architecture, process understanding, being able to build agents on top of those processes and data, and less around building stuff, building interfaces or all that kind of stuff. So moving the IT organization out of the coding world and into the architecture and data world, I think that's something from a training and investment viewpoint, I think will stand organizations well, as the pioneers are out there knocking agents out of the park and telling us all their stories about how they've done it and kind of hopefully success stories.
Thank you. And just before we do close, gents, is there anything perhaps we may have missed in the conversation, anything to add before the close?
No, I think overall, I think this was, for me, it was a different Sapphire. It was just... it was interesting. I was at Gartner last week. I was at Gartner in supply chain in Barcelona for 3 days, and they were talking about the autonomous enterprise. So it was really interesting going to a business conference and they're talking about the autonomous enterprise from that perspective. And the previous week being in SAP, where they're talking about the autonomous enterprise from a software perspective. So I think it shows, even though they were disconnected, these two groups, that it's starting to coalesce. It's all about the process, all about the data, and all about the intelligent layer you can put on top of it to try and make some sort of better business decisions and faster business decisions. So I think it's moving. I think the world is moving, and it's just a question of where it's going to land.
Certainly seems a direction of travel. And Ian, final words for you, sir.
We all need to lean in and make a start and learn from each other. But as we lean in and make a start, we need to understand how it all works and understand how it's all going to cost in order that we can do those cost-benefit calculations that Conor mentioned earlier. But I think we need to make a start. Yep.
And that devil is always in the detail. And, simplification, I think, I was having a conversation earlier today and, around that, how much is it going to cost? Simplifying how much it's going to cost and how agents are priced, etc., is a key element of all of this, I think. But Conor, Ian, thank you. Thank you so much for your time today, and thank you for your insights. I really do appreciate you joining us.
Okay, thanks, Craig. Thanks, Ian.
And thank you for listening. We hope you enjoyed the conversation and found it valuable. Please make sure you do subscribe so you don't miss any of our future episodes. And until the next time, stay safe, stay well, and as Ian said, make a start.